Hey, everybody. Welcome to In Broad Daylight, a solo podcast hosted by me. I'm Adam Todd Brown. There is a lot to talk about this week, so let's talk right about it. Up first, a story that proves a thing I say all the time, which is that when it comes to falling for dumb stuff on the internet, very young people and very old people are basically the same. If you don't believe that, then please explain how the Chase Bank glitch managed to go viral on TikTok. If you're unfamiliar, a Chase Bank customer somehow became aware of a glitch where if you deposited a check into your Chase account, the funds were available immediately. Normally, the bank makes a small portion of that money available, and then they put a hold on the rest until they can confirm the check is authentic. In other words, because of this glitch, you could write a check, deposit it into your account, and then withdraw the entire amount before Chase ever realized the check was bogus. That part was real. There are still videos out there on social media showing people literally throwing money in the air and dancing outside of Chase Bank locations. Of course, more experienced bank customers immediately recognize this trend for what it is: bank fraud. It's just a crime committed against one of the biggest financial institutions in the world. So it's a victimless crime, but still against the law. Chase didn't get as huge as they are by letting customers withdraw tens of thousands of dollars they don't have and then calling it even because it was a trend on TikTok. Of course, almost as quickly as all of those social media videos of Chase customers celebrating their ill-gotten gains started making the rounds, follow-up videos started popping up of those same customers complaining about their accounts now being locked and with negative balances in the tens of thousands of dollars. In one video, a guy even has the gall to be mad at Chase for denying him access to the money he had just rightfully and lawfully stolen the day before. He did everything right, he followed the TikTok instructions to the letter, and they still took that money back. Rude. Now, don't get me wrong. It is kind of funny that TikTok briefly turned check fraud into a viral trend, but this is also sad and tragic and alarming in so many different ways. For starters, it is a stark reminder of how powerful the combo of misinformation and social media is when it comes to convincing gullible people to do dumb things. In this case, we're just talking about people being compelled to commit financial crimes. In India, over the last few years, misinformation on the internet has often ended in violence, incited by fake news about people eating beef. It's called cow vigilantism, and those two words only sound funny together because you're not looking down the barrel of a group of stick-wielding Narendra Modi supporters. Still, the people who actually went through with the Chase glitch scheme are, for lack of a better term, fucked. It's not just that they're going to have to pay this money back. The chances of opening an account at a new bank when your account at your old bank is 5 figures in the hole or more are slim to none. And it stands to reason that if you're participating in a scheme like this, you probably don't have the money to pay the bank back. And then what? Wire fraud is a felony no matter the dollar amount. And it's even more of a felony when it involves a financial institution. If it comes to pass that this money isn't paid back, are people going to start getting arrested? Probably. And hey, that sucks. A confluence of corporations and social media misinformation wrecking the lives of a bunch of young people isn't exactly internet yuck-em-ups, you know? Especially when you take into account that Chase Bank has been the beneficiary of billions of dollars in government bailout money. The government's not going to bail these kids out, that's for sure, but they should. Also, sidebar question, who still has checks? Apparently this scheme involved fraudulent mobile check deposits, which implies that several people along the chain of command had checkbooks. I haven't written a check in what feels like a quarter of a century now. Am I the weird one here? Because every checkbook that I've seen lately that wasn't attached to a business account was attached to the hand of someone who was at least 75 years old. Is this just another thing that supports my theory that the youngs and the very olds are more alike than they realize? Sound off in the comments, kids. I know you're listening. All right, and now for a story involving a different evil financial institution. Wells Fargo. A Wells Fargo employee in Tempe, Arizona was found dead in her cubicle at work. That part alone is bad enough. Of all the places to die, you sure as hell don't want it to be at your corporate bank job. I've had a couple before. They suck. But it somehow gets worse. According to a timeline provided to a local Tempe, Arizona news outlet by authorities, the employee, a 60-year-old woman named Denise Prudhomme, clocked in for work Friday morning at 7 a.m. Meanwhile, her body was found by coworkers on Tuesday. So her body sat rotting in her cubicle for 4 days before anyone noticed. And sure, her desk was on the third floor and away from the main aisle. And yeah, most employees at this building work from home, apparently. But still, you would hope a big, rich corporate employer would at least take care of their employees enough to know if one of them died at their desk. Prudhomme's dead body was only discovered because it started to smell. And even then, her fellow coworkers just chalked it up to faulty plumbing at first. This is quintessential corporate job behavior. I was employed at a major health insurance company in my past life. And one day I went to work even though I was a little bit sick. It wasn't anything contagious and I didn't want to burn more sick time than I needed to. So I figured I'd tough it out. But with about an hour left in my day, my condition got the best of me and I briefly fell asleep at my desk. And now you know that thing where jobs love to tell you that you're family? Well, guess what my family did when they realized I'd fallen asleep at my desk? They walked right past my cubicle where they could have stopped to, wake me up, and instead marched straight to my boss's office to tell her that I had fallen asleep at my desk. Your job is not your family. Your coworkers are not your family. I'm sure there are some office environments where it feels like that might be the case, but I've never experienced a single one. And I've worked in a bunch, both before and after I quit my day job to start writing comedy on the internet for money. I have no doubt that the most common office environment is the one where you die at your desk and no one notices for a half a week or more. Okay, let's close out with an update to a story I covered a few episodes back about how the oceanside city of Rancho, Palos Verdes, California is about to be has fallen into the ocean city of Rancho, Palos Verdes, California. The problem is land movement, which is happening at enough of a clip that the local gas company cut off service to hundreds of residents back in July. After that happened, geologists felt confident enough that they could start poking around underground to check out what's happening and why everything's sliding into the ocean without blowing anything up. Unfortunately, what they found instead was that the problem is way worse than they thought. I'm not a geologist, but what I gather from reading about this is that at first, the thinking was that what was happening was a series of small land movements in different areas. But upon further inspection, several of those smaller landslides are on top of something much bigger called the Altamira Slip Plain, which just on name alone, you should recognize as bad news in a situation like this. The Altamira Slip Plain is thought to be moving up to 100 times faster than it was just 5 years ago. So when I talked about this last time, the concern with residents of the impacted area was that with gas service having been cut off, it probably wouldn't be long before they lose electricity also. And now that has happened. SoCal Edison shut off power to 140 homes. Here's a quote. "The land movement there has created such a dangerous situation that we must make that difficult decision to disconnect power indefinitely." End quote. That is David Eisenhower, SoCal Edison spokespersoning to the LA Times. What about power generators, though, you ask? Well, if you're talking about the kind that's powerful enough to keep a house the size of the houses we're talking about here running, the city says the ground isn't stable enough to install them on. This land is moving, in some spots at a rate of up to a foot per week. I've seen local news reports where residents talk about how their backyard used to be pretty big, and now most of it is just gone. The city issued an evacuation warning after the power was cut. That means people need to start getting ready to leave. An evacuation order will mean you have to leave. And that seems like it's coming sooner than later. So far, there aren't any plans to cut gas or power to any of the surrounding neighborhoods that are also falling into the ocean, but at a much slower rate. But also, no one's ruling it out. So unless someone can figure out how to literally stop the Earth from moving, until some brave scientist can muster the gumption to look the law of gravity in the eyes and say, not today and not anymore, it seems like Rancho Palos Verdes, home of Trump International Golf Course Los Angeles, is on its way to becoming the fanciest ghost town of all time. And hey, that's our episode. Thank you so much for listening or watching, depending on how you're doing it. I appreciate you either way. If you don't mind, how about you give me a follow on the gram at Adam Todd Brown? That's Todd with 1D. I would appreciate it a lot. And, subscribe, like, do all those things. And that's it. Thanks, everybody.